Hello, I am one of your psychology professors, and I'm here to talk to you, give you your fireside chat about Lesson 9, kind of a warm up to this chapter, so when you dive into it, it won't seem so kind of intimidating and big. We start with this painting of Philippe Pinel, who is, as you can see, ordering the removal of the chains at a hospital in Paris. This hospital still exists in Paris, and so actually do these little poles you can see on the right-hand side and the little chairs where the women were chained. What Pinel was trying to do, obviously, was to say this is no way to treat people who have mental health issues. And he kind of gave a kickoff, if you will, to the moral treatment movement. Soon to follow in the United States was Dorothea Dix. She worked closer to around the time of the Civil War in the 1860s, and she said the same thing in the United States. She went around and looked at how people with mental illnesses were being treated. Most of the time, people with mental illnesses were kind of wards of the state that were doled out to farms or people that would kind of house them and keep them, and they were treated quite poorly. She helped to revolutionize the idea that there should be institutions. And while we think of institutions today, we think of people who are, deinstitutionalized, the other end of institutionalization, homelessness, living on the streets, or ending up incarcerated in prisons because of being homeless and being picked up for crimes, often just very petty crimes, and ending up with prison sentences where treatment for mental health obviously is not adequate. So while Dorothea Dix and Pinel did revolutionize us, some of the fixes, such as large institutions, ended up being not places where people could be healed entirely. They became crowded. They became, a workforce that couldn't be maintained properly. So about the 1970s, people were kind of turned back into the community. The good news is that even though how we've had issues with in and out of institutions, we have developed a lot of techniques that have been really useful for treatments, people having various problems. So Freud, of course, starts psychodynamic or psychoanalytic therapy, talking and exploring your unconscious world, treatments for children based on play, and also treatments that had nothing to do with the interior unconscious world, behavior therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy in particular, were created to change the way people thought and to stop behaviors that were detrimental to people. So if one had depressive thoughts, the idea was to replace the depressive thoughts with more positive thoughts, and in fact, you would be less depressive. Humanistic therapy, you can see that at the very end there, was another group of psychotherapists, and while not entirely cold against psychoanalysis, they simply thought it was not necessary to give the unconscious over to somebody's treatment, but rather to work with the ego, to sit with people, to have people be authentic, truthful, for the therapist to give unconditional positive regard and empathy and understanding to their clients as a way to bring them into more healthy places. When we look at Freud's couch, we have to remember that Freud's couch is important because he systematically developed the talk therapy, the talk therapies that are used today that were quiet, you're in a room alone with the therapist, and that you're talking in a way that's going to lead you towards self-revelations that move you into a healthier life place. We also want to think about cognitive behavioral therapy as paired often with behaviorism. So here we have a page talking about aversive conditioning. You have a behavior that's negative. Let's call it drinking too much. So we're going to, devise something that's aversive or highly negative to your drinking behavior. And we're going to distribute this antabuse, in this case, to you. It's going to make you sick every time you do the behavior of drinking. We also can think about cognitive behavioral therapy as being a way to work with people who are depressive, as we mentioned, but also people who have PTSD, to go through and try to understand the cognition behind having trauma. Do we keep thinking about a trauma, or do we want to move away from the traumatic thoughts? And how can we systematically do this in a therapy setting? Obviously, there's group therapy, People don't always want to work alone with the therapist. Sometimes it's group dynamics that really open people up. Feedback from the group, the alliances that can happen in a group that can be both positive and negative for the whole group can be examined by someone leading a group therapy. The bottom line, however, is that people from all over the world have, mental health issues, and people from all over the world have a more positive and or negative view of psychotherapy. I hope this is helpful. Enjoy reading the chapter. I think you're gonna like it.